I'm not going to give you guys a long talk, inshallah ta'ala. It's something very short, something I think is relevant to you at this age, and something I feel you better address now, and nobody but yourself can really address it for you. The ayah that I want to base this talk on basically are two ayat. One comes from the beginning of Surah Al-Imran. This is the third surah of the Quran, and one of the longest. One's in the beginning of Al-Imran, and the other is at the end of Al-Imran. But they both deal with the same concept. In the beginning, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. This is in the beginning. I'll share the meaning with you in a bit, inshallah. At the end of this same surah, Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافِ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ لَآيَاتٍ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. So he mentions the same group, Ulul Albab. That's the term used in the beginning of the surah and also at the end. You know how in a class, if a good teacher is teaching a class, they'll start with a lesson, they'll get into lots of stuff, and by the end of class, right before they let you go, if they know what they're doing, you know what they're going to do? They're going to review everything they talked about in the beginning. They won't leave you without doing sort of a recap of everything we talked about. Remember, A, B, C, D, this is what we did today, right? That's the idea. The same thing happens in the Quran a lot. So we'll talk about a bunch of things in the surah, but by the end, he'll wrap it all up by bringing up exactly the very things he started with. Okay, this is what's happening in this surah also. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions a group called Ar-Rasikhuna fil Ilm, those who are deeply rooted in knowledge. And before I go on, I want to share one more thing with you guys, which is that when you're learning, when you're listening to a talk or a speech or a lecture or anything like that, doors open, people walk by, kids cry, people scratch their heads, all kinds of things happen that would never get your attention. You would never look at those things ever, unless you're sitting in a lecture. Then all of a sudden the door opening becomes the most interesting. Watch. 20 heads. Oh my God, it opens all the way. And you're going to walk all the way across the room and all the heads go that way, and go that way, right? So when you're learning, when it comes to learning, it takes very little to distract you. So much as a squirrel going up a tree. If you're sitting in college in your classroom and a squirrel goes up a tree out the window, 400 people like that, right? Even if they're PhDs. So try to avoid the temptation, and inshallah ta'ala, you'll become better learners that way. So what was I talking about before the door opened? Gotcha, go ahead. Yeah, ulul albab, the people that are deeply rooted in knowledge. Allah talks about intellectuals, basically. Who is an intellectual according to Allah? Now, in our times, who do you consider an intellectual? Somebody who's really smart, somebody who uses big words, a professor, a Rhodes Scholar, a PhD, a doctor, a scientist. These are intellectuals, right? So Allah gives His own definition of what's an intellectual. He says, آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلُّ مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. Those who are deeply rooted in knowledge, they say we come to believe in it being the Quran. That's the first sign of a true intellectual. The second, كُلُّ مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. All of it is especially from our Master. In other words, whether we get it or not, it's from Allah. The parts we understand of the Quran are from Allah, and the parts we don't understand are from Allah. We give our intellect up. We understand the limits of our intellect. Right? So the true intellectual is the one, the truly smart, the truly scholarly is the one who knows the limits of their intellect. That's the first thing. And then Allah says, وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ التَّذَكُّرُ, which is actually a form of يَتَذَكَّرُ. This word in Arabic means to make an effort to remember. So Allah says, who's going to make an effort to remember it at all except, and then He mentions this group called Ulul Albab. And to be very coarse and rough in definition, I'll say the people that possess the essence, the people of pure essence. So who are these people of pure essence and how do you become one? Right? That's the question. Allah says nobody makes an effort to remember truth and remember this lesson about who's an intellectual, who really is rooted in knowledge, except the people of pure essence. So when you go to the end of the surah, you'll find a definition of who these ulul albab are. In the beginning it says, you want to be deeply grounded in knowledge, you want to have these characteristics, become a person of pure essence. At the end, how do you become a person of pure essence? How do you become a person, if you want to use simple terminology, a clean mind, a pure mind? Okay? Because what we're learning here is you cannot become a person of deep thought until you become a person of a pure mind. That's the thing I want to talk to you about in the next 10 or so minutes. What does it mean to have a pure mind? And what does Allah define it as? The word lub, which is the root, the source word in the albab, is the word lub. Lub in Arabic means, aqlun salih. It means a good mind, khalisun min ash-shawa'ib, that's the key word. It's free from vanities. A sound mind that is free from vanities. And this is, if you don't remember anything from this talk, this is what I'd like you to remember. A sound mind is one that is free from, what was the word again? Vanity. Vanity. Useless thought. Useless knowledge. And we're living in a society, and in times, it's not even just in the United States, it's all over the world, where there's what you can call information overload. We're all Googled out. Okay, we have too much information. And information is being bombarded to us, left, right, and center, wherever you go. Messages are being pumped at you in advertising, when you turn the radio on, when you're flipping channels, when you're going through websites, banner ads, this, that, the other, sports statistics, characters in movies, how many seasons of what show, and what happened to that guy, and what they are, from video games to movies to news to everything else. There's tons and tons and tons of information is being bombarded at you, right? And you can't even so much as drink a bottle of Snapple. You take the cap off, and what do you get? The useless facts on the back, right? Constantly you're being exposed to information. And you get exposed to so much information that you can't tell the difference between useful and useless information anymore. You become desensitized. You have so much information that you can't tell what's useful and what's useless. Because, it's all just a big mess in your head. But the other thing that happens is, when you really come across some really knowledgeable, beneficial information, something that's really going to help you in life, you don't appreciate it. You put it on the shelf along with all the other junk in your head. You don't really see what the point of it is. I'll give you an example of that. You know what's been said about Surah Yusuf in the Quran? How Allah introduces it? How does Allah praise the story of Yusuf? What does He call it? It's a famous thing. We're telling you what? We're narrating on to you, even if you know the rough translation. The best narrative. This is the best story. Allah calls the story of Yusuf alayhi salam the best story. We can chit chat later. Can you turn it off? Okay, fine, don't close the door. I'll stop talking. Trying to make me feel bad. They don't even feel bad. Anyway, the worst is when you're giving a lecture and the guy in the front row has sent a phone call, which of course he has to have a 50-cent phone ring for some reason. First he lets it go for half the song, and then, when everybody's head is going like this, then he picks it up and says, yeah, I can't talk right now, I'm in a lecture. Oh, what happened? Oh, really? And then they go for a whole conversation with benefit. So, be considerate to your audience. Anyway, so be considerate to a speaker. It takes a lot to speak, and you guys get distracted easily. Imagine the speaker. Right? They see a distracted, like, where am I? What am I doing? Okay. So what was I saying again? Useless and useful information. Very good. Okay. So the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah says it's the best possible story. I was teaching it at Sunday school one time, and you know what happened? One of the kids goes, no, it's not. I'm like, why? I'm not going to say, that's kufr, astaghfirullah, check your aqidah. He's in third grade. He said, no, it's not. I said, why isn't it? He goes, Dragon Ball Z is so much better. And he's telling me the whole history, how he went from Saiyan to Super Saiyan, and his hair went from blonde to yellow to green to whatever, right? And he came back to life in the dragon, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool, man. That is pretty interesting. But Allah says what? That the story of Yusuf is the best story. But it might be hard to convince a child of that. They might be more impressed with their video game, the story, the plot in their video game, or the story they are watching in a cartoon show, right? Or a movie they saw. They thought that was an awesome storyline. So many twists and turns. So how do you explain that to a child, or how do you convince them even? You don't have to actually. Allah at the end of that, so remember how I said the lessons in the beginning and then the answer or reviews at the end? What happens at the end of Surah Yusuf? Allah says, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قِصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ. In their stories there are lessons, profound lessons, but for who? Not for everyone. لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. For the people of what? What is ulul albab? Pure minds that are free from what? Vanity. This kid's head is filled with vanities. And until his mind becomes pure, he's not going to see that this is the best story. Right? The fact that he doesn't see it as the best story is a proof that his mind hasn't been what? Hasn't been cleansed yet. It's dirt. It's full of garbage, fluff. And this is stuff like, mashallah, if you think it's hard to memorize Quran or it's hard to remember a lot of Islamic knowledge and you think that's impressive, it's not. Because you guys know so much about an actor and how many babies they adopted, or what color they dyed their hair in what year, and you know so much about what happened in what episode in what show. You know so much about the sports statistics, some of you guys, right? Free throw averages and touchdown averages and how many playoff victories and how many years. We have all this useless, absolutely worthless knowledge. And it's there to make small talk. In the end, the only reason we have this information is to make small talk with each other. Sometimes this useless knowledge is something it's something useful in and of itself, but we get obsessed with it, like cars or technology or the new app or whatever it may be, But our heads are filled with so much of this useless stuff. It's a testimony that it could have been filled with useful stuff too. We just didn't want it to. We thought this was a better use of our mind. Allah gave us such an amazing thing, and it's being used for such junk. Right? The mind is an incredible thing. In a hadith, the Prophet says, "Ma خَلَقَ اللَّهُ خَلْقًا أَكْرَمَ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْعَقْلِ." Allah didn't create anything more noble than the intellect. That's what he says in the hadith. It's an amazing, this mind of ours is an amazing thing. And imagine how sad it is how it's being put to use. I went to this kid's house one time, and he was playing, I think it was Final Fantasy 9, 10. What's the new one out, You guys got to keep up. Anyway, so they play Final Fantasy. This is a role-playing game. It's obviously a Japanese game, and this kid's got like menu, sub-menu, category, subcategory, weapon, sub-weapon, which bullets to use, which monster gets hit with which weapon, and he's going through walkthroughs which are like 50 pages long on a website, right? It's like a whole course he's taking on playing a video game. And I'm remembering, man, in the early 1800s when I was playing video games, this is what a video game was. Bonk. This was a video game. Now it's gotten so complicated. So much knowledge, useless knowledge, is necessary to even entertain yourself, right? Even with cartoons back in the early part of the last century, it was a cat running after a mouse. That was a cartoon. Now you got like Yu Yu Hakusho and all these complicated shows with these complicated cards. I used to teach at an Islamic school. These kids had cards. You ever seen those? They start with Pokemon cards and those other kinds of cards. Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? Those things. And of course, they all have a different shaitan on them. Those kids got that, and these kids, they watch this, they read this stuff, and they get lost in that world of these shows, right? So these two kids get into a fight, and he takes out one of his cards and he throws it at the other guy. And you know why he threw it at him? Because he was thinking, out of that card, a monster is going to come out and chop his head off, right? That's what he really started believing it. He got messed up in the head, this kid. Throwing a card at another guy, And that's funny, but it's also very disturbing. That this mythology and these weird, twisted, demonic, satanic beliefs have now become entertainment. My kids are just watching cartoons, right? But you guys are above that. Obviously this audience, most of it is older than that. What's your big problem? Your big problem is the entertainment industry, music industry. And within that, the thing that's destroying your character, for you even the minor problem is useful information. You know what the major problem for your age is? Overexposure to shamelessness. Shamelessness in how people talk to you, what kinds of things you hear in school, the kinds of language people use, vulgarity, foul language, disgusting things, the kinds of social networks you're involved in, and the kinds of pictures your friends post on them. These are the kinds of things, and movies, and the kinds of things that you're exposed to in movies constantly. It's not even once in a while. Every day, constantly, you're exposed to this stuff, and you know what happens to you? And at first, maybe you felt a little disturbed when you saw something shameless, vulgar. You heard some foul language. But you know what happens over time? You get used to it. That's the first thing that happens. And then what happens over time? You don't feel so bad when you use it yourself. And then what happens over time? You don't feel so bad when you do the very thing you were watching. You're tempted to do it yourself. Right? You're going from being a decent human being down to becoming an animal. That's really what's happening. An animal has no control over what it says. An animal has no control over what it does. It feels an instinct, it follows it. That's it. That's an animal. But Allah made us human beings. And you know what's the difference between human beings and an animal? It's the intellect. And in Arabic, the word intellect is aql, which literally means a means of restraint and control. If you can't control yourself, you don't even have intellect. And if you don't have intellect, you're not even a human. You're just an animal walking around in human form. That's all you are. Right? So Allah says, you want to become a person of knowledge, become a person of pure mind. So you'll retain your humanity. I tell you, like my teacher says all the time, most people on the face of this earth, especially in high school, are animals walking around under human garb. This is where you lose your humanity. When you reach this age, you lose your humanity. Brothers lose men lose respect for women. Women lose respect for themselves. You lose respect for society, your parents, the elders, wisdom. You lose respect for everything. You become what I like to call the whatever culture. Everything you hear, you know what your first response is? Whatever. How was the speech? Whatever. What do you say? Whatever. What do you think? Whatever. Your whole life becomes whatever. You're apathetic to everything. And you know why that is? It's a sign. That's the last thing I want to talk about, and I'm done, inshallah ta'ala. That's a sign of the ultimate problem. The ultimate problem isn't shamelessness. The ultimate problem is not useful information. Those are minor problems compared to the ultimate problem. You know what the ultimate problem is? Ego. That's the ultimate problem. You're obsessed with who? Yourself. You can't get over yourself. You're obsessed with how you look. You're obsessed with what people say about you. You're so egotistical, you become, that if somebody says something really powerful and amazing, you can't even, it's below your ego to show emotion. So you know what you have to say? Whatever. Even if you feel something on the inside, say, yeah, okay, it doesn't bother me. It's not talking about me. You're too hard. You're too, tough. You're full of too much pride to show that this has effect on you. But the people of real knowledge, when they heard knowledge, you know what used to happen to them? They used to cry their heart out. This is described in the Quran, and they fall on their face in sajda. يَخِرُّونَ لِلْأَذْقَانِ يَبْكُونَ. They fall on their faces and they're crying. But you get filled, you get so inflated with your ego. Your ego comes from how you look, what your status is, what people say about you, how popular you are, how good you think you look, how smart you think you are, how much money you think you have, what kind of car your parents drive or you start driving soon. Right? These are just symbols of ego, and you get inflated. And by the way, what was the ultimate problem of shaitan? How many haram things did he do? So he gets to be called shaitan. Right? Well, how many people did he kill or murder? Or what kind of crimes did he do that he gets to be called shaitan? Yeah, ego. He had an ego problem. Why him? What's that? It's dust, clay, man. Fire right here. He said whatever. Basically. That's what he said. Make sajda, whatever. Right? That's the ultimate ego problem. So whose footsteps are we following? Allah says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And guess what? That's the biggest problem of our youth today. Yourself.
How about I don't care?
That's very well said. I don't see this apathy, this distancing yourself from emotion, responsibility, distancing yourself from actually even your own self. This is actually a deeply spiritual problem that is faced by our youth. And when that happens, it's easy for you to turn to an animal. That's really what's happening. And you aren't being told that enough. You're not being told that enough. Nobody's there to tell you, listen, your friends are turning you from a noble human being into nothing more than an ornate animal. That's what they're turning you into. So you need to change your company. You're not being told that enough. And so the people around you are your destruction. So, and that's really what I wanted to get at in the end, inshallah. There's three major problems I brought to your attention. One was useless knowledge. That's what I tried to bring to your attention. The second was overexposure to what? Shamelessness in speech, in company, in things you see, and being desensitized to that. And the third is basically the root of all of this, which is a problem of ego. That's really these three things. Now, this is supposed to be a verse on the Quran. So the last thing I want to tell you, remember I said the people of a pure mind, Allah defines them at the end of Al-Quran. So what does He tell us? Basically, He tells us two things they do. الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض. And that's it. He just tells us two things about these people that you need to know at the heart of it. He said these are people who remember Allah all the time. When you remember Allah all the time, you are remembering someone who's greater than yourself. Right? And the more you remember His greatness, the more it reminds you of what? How pathetic who is. You are. It keeps your ego in check. And the more egotistical you become, the more it's a sign of the fact that you don't what? Don't remember Allah. If you were really remembering Allah all the time, you wouldn't have time to be obsessed with your ego. You'd be obsessed with Allah and His magnificent power in creation. You'd be humbled by it all the time. So the first solution to a person with a pure mind is they remember Allah. And then anything that takes them away from remembering Allah, they see that as an enemy. So it's, if your friends take you away from remembering Allah, if it's your laptop that takes you away from remembering Allah, if it's your iPhone that takes you away I have an iPhone, it's okay. But it's, right? iPod, fine. iPod Touch that takes you away from remembering Allah. If it's your PS3, if it's Grand Theft Auto 57, whatever, right? If that takes you away from remembering Allah, then that's what's turning you into an animal. And actually more like a zombie when you're playing this video game, right? Allah describes the heedless as cattle. أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're like cattle, they're even worse. Look at a kid playing video games. Don't tell me they don't look like cattle. That's all they're doing. Now Allah compares them to cattle because cattle has no idea what's going on around it. You know that? A cow has no idea what's up. A car could pass by on the highway, won't even look up. Now watch somebody who's playing video games. There could be a fire in the house. That's all that's going on. They're turned into cattle, even worse. Even worse. Even worse because the cattle, at least it's naturally that way. You were given reflexes. You were made aware. You became worse than subhanAllah. SubhanAllah. So I mean, I don't want to give you a complicated academic lecture. I just wanted to bring forth concerns that I see are the primary concerns for youth, inshallah ta'ala. I just wanted to share with you a heart-to-heart. I don't claim that I'm above these problems. I probably had similar or worse problems when I was your age, but nobody was there to tell me. Nobody was going to say, man, you're messed up. You need to become human. Stop being an animal. Really. When you use a lot of cuss language, don't think you're all hardcore because you can curse. I can curse better than you. But the fact that I hold myself back, you know what that means? I'm more human than you are. That's what that means. And you're less, because you can't control what? You can't control your tongue. So may Allah Azza wa Jalla make all of you decent human beings. May Allah Azza wa Jalla help you protect your humanity and make you good to your families and obedient to your parents. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make you people who actually care and don't take an apathetic, egotistical approach to everything in life. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make you identify your real priorities in life, especially when it comes to avoiding all forms of shamelessness. And secondly, taking care of your parents and being respectful to them. So I'd like to share with you Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Do we have a Q&A session?
Do we have a Q&A session? No, right? No questions, right?
Can I voluntarily initiate one?
Is that a question or a comment? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering because I thought it's important for maybe you could advise us. How can we deal with those instances when we see individuals who are full of this, like you said, useless knowledge? Like, for instance, you have a movie star, but they're going and adopting people from Africa, and you have like a football player probably getting into a lot of charity, or you're listening to music, and there are instances. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of times what really deviates us is this mix between the good and bad. How you find the good and bad both in one place, and God starts blurring in our mind that fine line that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala draws between right and wrong.
It's actually I'm really happy you asked that question. I gave khutbah about that yesterday. The Quran says something really peculiar. Really peculiar. You have to pay real attention if you want to understand this, okay? A number of times in the Quran you find the phrase وَزَيَّنَ لَهُمُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُم. Shaitan beautified their deeds to them. The word amal in Arabic doesn't just mean deeds, it usually implies good deeds. It doesn't imply deeds, mostly it implies good deeds. If the evil deeds are mentioned in specific, we find the word su'u amali, the worst of their deeds or evil forms of deeds. So Allah is saying shaitan beautified to them their good deeds in a sense. What in the world does that mean? Good deeds are beautiful anyway, so shaitan is doing a good thing. I mean, I would find it bad if shaitan made them beautify what? Bad deeds. But Allah says no, shaitan made them beautify good deeds. Why would he say that? You see, there are people who do really, really horrible things. Really horrendous things. And then they do something what? Good. And then shaitan makes them say, man, you're so good. You do this one good thing. You're such an awesome person. People should be just like you. And they make them, that one good thing makes them forget what? The really bad thing that they just did. right? So what Shaitan does is he makes you worry about that one good thing and highlight that, and that's supposed to compensate for all the. By the way, Fir'aun tried this. Musa alayhi salam came to Fir'aun, let Bani Israel go. Fir'aun says to him, Alam Rabbika Fina Walida? Didn't we raise you as a child? Didn't you spend many years with us? Is that a good deed or no? That's a good deed. You know how Musa responded? Yeah, you did do that a real big favor to me. Does that mean you get to enslave Bani Israel? So you did that really good thing. Thanks, you babysat me for so many years. I guess that lets you become a slave owner for an entire nation. How are you comparing these two things? One doesn't cancel the other out. This isn't positive and negative in a video game. You lose points for doing this. You gain points for doing that. This one doesn't erase the other necessarily. No. And so we have to understand when somebody does something evil or they're associated with something evil, we call it that. Not people don't only do bad things and people don't only do good things. People do a mix of all of those things, right? And it's okay to appreciate a good athlete. There's nothing wrong with that. But thinking that these are the people to look up to, what do they look up to? What's their goal in life? Once this guy loses his knee in an accident in a basketball game, is he still going to be your hero? All of that. What did you look up to? How high he can jump? That's it. That's So you're basically only looking at things that are less than. I come back to the same point. Less than human, less than decent. Anybody can do that. But look up to someone who makes you an awesome person. Which is why I didn't say this advice before, but I'll say it now. I'm ranting now, but find older people to be friends with. It's good to have older friends. They're more mature than you. They're smarter than you. They can tell you when you're acting stupid. Friends your age make you dumber. Seriously. Friends older than you make you smarter. Yes?
I'm just looking at the things that you said, that the shaitan would make us the one good thing and highlight it. And with this thing, would the shaitan make us arrogant with this one? And forgetting that,
arrogant and happy with it.
That's the lesson, maybe it's, which is takes the shaitan away from Jannah.
Yeah.
Arrogance. It's the first sin. God isn't even takes that.
But nobody else has a question, right? And everyone's waiting on. I made him listen to me. It's not right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just kind of want our advice. Like, okay, so many of us we have our highest our Quranic, going back to the Quran, our highest educational Quran is many of us go through life with only a third grade understanding of the Quran, where we either stop studying it or we don't go anywhere past just reading it once, or just memorizing just a few things from the back of Juz Allah. And what is something that we can do to continue it? And also what would you set by, for example, not that we should set limits or anything like that, or boundaries or stages, but in a way, what would you say by age 10 you should know, by age 10, by age 15 you should be at this point?
Well, for some of you those ships have sailed, right? So might as well just identify milestones instead of age milestones. Because none of your very few of your parents here, so. But what I think is the advantage of the Muslim world is that you have scholars that have given really nice lectures on the entire Quran. Explaining the Quran to people with proper tafsir in the language of the people. This is an advantage of the Muslim world. People have done this in the Arab world. People have done this in the Indo-Pak subcontinent. This is only beginning to happen in English now. Where, I don't think we are a people of reading as much as we are a people of what? Of listening. And when you listen to something, it sticks. When you read something, you forget. At least that's the case with me. So I think one of the things you guys have to do now, inshallah ta'ala, is to maybe highly encourage your local imams to start halaqat of regular tafsir that are years in commitment, just once a week. And don't worry about quantity of Quran, worry about what? Quality of Quran. Just one passage that you know really, really, really well. You memorize it, you recite it properly, you use it in prayer, you've studied every single word of it, you know it's tafsir, you've heard lectures on it, you've asked really hard questions about it, you know so much about this one passage. That's a healthy relationship with the Quran. As opposed to having a shallow knowledge of the whole, a lot of Quran. That's not as beneficial as having a lot of really good knowledge about a select passage from the Quran. This is one resource I can tell you about. It's not the only resource, and there's some really good stuff out there now, mashallah. I made a 7-year commitment to do a lecture series on the entire Quran. At least as in-depth as I can study on the entire Quran. And I started this about 25 weeks ago. I study a page of Quran a week, and then I I started from Juz Amma because most people memorize Juz Amma. So whatever I've done so far is actually posted online in the free MP3s. There you can get them at bayina.com/stream. They're on the site. So what you could do for starters at least is, okay, so you memorized the surah, like let's say Surah Al-Naba, you memorized it. Now you can listen to the lecture on it, listen to whatever tafsirs you have at your disposal on it. Become really thoroughly knowledgeable in one surah. And then when you're done, move on to the next surah. And it doesn't have to be a full-time Sharia degree or Mufassir degree. It's a long-term relationship a Muslim has with Quran. And if it takes a long time to do a little bit of Quran, that's still good. It's still excellent, actually. Because even a little Quran is a transformational experience. It's very, very powerful stuff. It's very potent. Quran is very heavy. No writer, no songwriter, no entertainer is going to be heavy like that. You know, sometimes you listen to some man, that was deep. That wasn't deep. Quran is deep. I'm telling you, it's deep. It rattles you to the core. Man. Whoa. I'll give you an example. That's all I tip of my tongue I should give you. Should I give you? Yes. Last week I was teaching بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى, you know this? أَوْحَى إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. You know, in Arabic we don't say أَوْحَى لَهَا, we say أَوْحَى إِلَيْهَا. We don't say لَهَا, we say إِلَيْهَا. It means the rough translation of the ayah is because its Lord, or your Lord, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your master, had inspired the earth to give out its news. Meaning the earth, everything we do on the earth, it was being recorded, and you know who was watching it and absorbing it? The earth all this time. And on that day it gets to speak about everything it knows. It's been holding back, it's been quiet all this time, and then it gets to speak about it on the day of judgment. That is the ayah, يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. Then Allah says, why does it speak on that day? بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. Because your Lord, rough translation before you, because your Lord inspired it. Okay, your Lord inspired it. But if you want to say inspired it or instructed it even, you don't say awha laha, you say awha ilayha. The meaning changes with la. The meaning is because your Lord inspired it and gave it permission. وَأَذِنَ لَهَا is mahluf. He gave it permission. You know what that means? You know when you instruct someone, they may or may not want to do it. If I tell my daughter, go get me a glass of water, maybe she wants to get it, maybe she doesn't, but she's going to get it because I instructed her. But if I give her permission to go outside, then I know one thing for sure. That she what? She wanted to go. What we learned from that lam in the ayah is the earth wanted to speak all this time. The earth is like, it's been stuffing its stomach with all this nasty news, these secrets that it can't hold, and it's begging Allah, let me speak. Let me speak. There's too much, I can't take anymore. And then finally Allah says, go ahead. So we're learning that the earth is very impatient with us. It's holding back. The only thing holding it back is that Allah hasn't yet given it permission, but it wants to. You know, and it's going to regurgitate on that. SubhanAllah, just with that, man. It's deep, man. This stuff is deep. You just sit there and you go, whoa. The way you walk the earth now changes. You take it easy. You know, it changes your attitude. It's heavy stuff. So I mean, if you become a student of Quran, inshallah ta'ala, it's really, and then your mind is thinking about this stuff, and now you have no time for vanities. Hence becoming a person of pure mind. Allah make us of those people, inshallah. I'm not going to answer any more. Please don't ask me.